Let's assume everyone is looking for a God moment and give them the welcome and the respect they deserve.
When we were all inside our buildings, whether it was a warehouse or a Saxon building, we assumed everyone could get in if they wanted to, and struggled with DACs and other planning authorities to try and make adjustments if we realised that wasn't the case. Now everyone's online, we assume the same. Not necessarily the case. And online isn't always easy if you're in a rural community with no broadband, or if you're deaf or hearing impaired and trying to follow terrible captions if there are any. It surely has to be a lesson about mixed economy. If we're going to meet offline, our buildings must be fully accessible. If we're going to meet online, what we do must be fully accessible.
One of the things which is most important to me about online church is that you have to be intentional, much more intentional than you have to be in a physical space.
Many people have been hurt by the church, particularly in its traditional format. And whilst the church is inaccessible and often exclusive in nature, this will continue to happen. Many of the theological insights put blame and shame on the individual, rather than accepting them and inviting them to belong in God's family and in the church. Some of these hurt people will find church online, but sometimes they will come with their hurts and pains. When you see these comments, you need to be reviewing them carefully and decide whether they want action or whether they need to be treated with just love and compassion.
You need to be ready to have deep conversations quickly. People are used to doing that online. When you're online, be you. Assume everyone else is being themselves. Be honest, be caring, be open. Mainstream church is accessible in lots of ways to lots of people.
This situation is putting people under pressure, and I've lost count of the number of times I've seen comments on social media saying, "Oh, come on, Anglican Twitter, we're better than this," because people are openly disagreeing about all sorts of things. And firstly, I think it's dangerous to put pressure on ourselves to be perfect. And secondly, yes, we are like this. We're not better than this. We do disagree all the time. And what we have to learn is the art of disagreement without becoming emotional about it.
We need to be really careful about what we post and think about it before we do so. If you wouldn't share it with your grandmother, don't share it online.
Privacy. It can be really easy to think if you're happy for things to be shared about you or your picture to be shared or whatever, that everybody is like that. And some people really aren't. So before you share anything that is an image of somebody, a video of somebody, or even information about somebody, then you really need to check with that person. You can do untold damage to your relationships with them or to the person themselves by sharing things that they wanted to keep private. People often think, particularly social media, but online generally, is more private than it really is. When you write a tweet or a Facebook post or whatever it happens to be, you have to be prepared for that to be the headline on the 9 o'clock news. And don't say anything or have any conversation on social media or online that you wouldn't be happy to be having in public. Plenty of people out there who get called trolls because they just want to cause trouble. They just think that something's funny when it isn't. They think that having a go at somebody, being personal, being disruptive, undermining is a fun game. And it's not to the people on the receiving end. So be aware of those sorts of people.
Being me online is hard because sarcasm requires tone, facial expressions, and an understanding of me and how I understand and use humour for it to work. Therefore, whether I'm writing a post or replying to someone, I avoid using sarcasm with people who don't know me, and make sure the words I use are appropriate, not too strong in nature, and cannot be misunderstood. I also make sure the sentence is properly punctuated, as this can change the meaning. If you have been misunderstood, it's important to apologise, even if you don't think you did anything wrong.
You'll see on these videos that I've recorded, I've got a headset on. And that's because if you have a microphone, even if it's the one that came with your phone, then the sound quality on what you're doing is going to be so much better than if you're sat a little way away from your phone or your iPad or your computer and it doesn't have a microphone that's designed to pick up your voice in that regard. You'll just sound tinny or quiet, or there'll be lots of interference from around you what you're doing.
It's important to be available, not all the time, not 24/7, but to know that it's not just a Sunday for an hour or two. This is a lived experience. This is about journeying together.
It's a ministry of presence.
If you need help, ask from those who have done it before.
If I could make one point about working online, ask the people who do this all the time. Ask the people who have to work online. Ask the people who live here all the time. Ask the people who depend on it for their very existence in church and depend on it for so much of their daily lives.
You wouldn't probably ask a footballer how to take really great photos, or assume you know how to bake a cake just because you've seen or tasted it. In the same way, if you're new to online church and accessibility, please speak to some of us who have done it before. There's nothing about us without us.